The caves and shelters in Lagoa Cinta have been excavated by archaeologists ever since the early 19th century. Lagoa Cinta is a region and city of Brazil, located within the state of Minas Gerais, about 37 kilometers north of Belo Horizonte. In 1974, a French-Brazilian team of researchers led by French archaeologist Annette Lemming-Ampère were exploring a cave at the Lapa Vermelha archaeological site in the city of Pedro Leopoldo, located about 40 kilometers northwest of Belo Horizonte. Eventually, they came upon a skull after digging through more than 12 meters of minerals and debris. The skull was in very good condition, and a short while later they found around one-third of the rest of the skeleton belonging to the skull. The individual was determined to be female, and was estimated to have stood a little under 5 feet tall. Forensics determined that she likely died when she was in her early 20s. It has been theorized that she died either in an accident or due to an attack from an animal. Stone tools were also found near her remains. Researchers are certain she was part of a group of wandering hunter-gatherers. In the 1980s, further research hypothesized that her facial features included a thin and ovular cranium, a face that jutted out prominently, and a strong chin. These hypothesized facial features were seen to be in stark contrast to most other Native American groups. Researchers thought that her features looked more like the indigenous people from Australia and Melanesia. Melanesia is a region of Oceania, which encompasses New Guinea to the far west and Fiji to the far east. The researchers also made a connection between her hypothesized facial features and the indigenous people of the Andaman Islands. The Andaman Islands are located in the Indian Ocean and are part of India, and include islands such as North Sentinel Island, which is estimated to be home to around 100 indigenous Sentinelese inhabitants, and has been off-limits to visitors due to the violent hostility of its inhabitants towards any kind of contact with the outside world. However, Walter Neves, an anthropologist at the University of São Paulo, who has worked extensively on the find from Brazil, thinks that the individual's features most strongly look like those of the indigenous peoples of Australia. Neves also named the skeleton Luzia, in reference to the name Lucy, which was the nickname given to a well-preserved and at the time in 1974, the most complete Australopithecine fossil ever found. The name of Lucy has stuck ever since, and likewise the name of Luzia for the skeleton from Brazil has endured. Neves thinks that Luzia's ancestors lived in Southeast Asia for tens of thousands of years, after having migrated from Africa, before arriving in the New World around 15,000 years ago. This date of arrival roughly coincides with the gradual retreat of the glaciers after the last glacial maximum, which was a time period in Earth's history when glaciers were last at their greatest extent, between 26,000 and 20,000 years ago. During the height of the last glacial maximum, and for millennia afterwards, as the glaciers gradually receded between 19,000 and 15,000 years ago, the Bering Strait between Siberia and Alaska was obstructed by an impassable glacier. However, there are numerous so-called pre-Clovis archaeological sites in the Americas that predate the formation of a land bridge that would have allowed individuals to walk from Asia into the Americas. To many researchers, this can only mean that prehistoric migrants from Asia made their way into the Americas by way of boats in order to bypass the impassable glaciers. If Luzia's ancestors were theorized to have settled present-day Brazil 15,000 years ago, that means they almost certainly came to the Americas on boats. Additionally, with the 2023 genetic analysis of fossils found in southwestern China linking the ancestors of the original populations of China to present-day Native Americans and prehistoric Native American remains, it is quite entirely possible that Luzia's ancestors may have been part of the flow of genetics across present-day southern China, coastal East Asia, present-day Japan, and then going into the Americas. Going back to the 1980s, Neves has asserted that people who look like the indigenous peoples of Australia and the Andaman Islands came to the Americas around 15,000 years ago, in a massive wave before the subsequent wave of migrants from East Asia and Siberia. Within his framework, there are only two major migratory waves into the Americas from Asia. Neves argues that the first wave that eventually gave birth to Luzia in South America was largely replaced genetically by the second wave of peoples from East Asia and Siberia. However, Neves feels strongly that there are some indigenous people living in Brazil today, such as the Bodo Kudu tribe, that once bore a strong resemblance to the hypothetical features of Luzia and the indigenous peoples of Australia and the Andaman Islands up to the 19th century, but have since lost these features due to mixing with groups possessing the dominant Siberian and East Asian features. Bolstering Neves' timeline was the 1998 finding, with the aid of archaeologist André Pross, that determined that Luzia was around 11,400 years old. Further confirming this date was a study done in 2013, where researchers tested charcoal found alongside Luzia's bones and determined that they were around 11,500 years old. To this day, the remains are some of the oldest ever found in the Americas. Additionally, in 1998, at the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom, British anatomical artist Richard Neves and a team of researchers including Walter Neves created the first facial reconstruction of what Luzia may have looked like while alive. The facial reconstruction exhibits features that strongly resemble indigenous Australian and Melanesian groups, hypothesized features that Neves had been championing since the 1980s. Many researchers in the subsequent years since Neves first propounded his theories on Luzia's genetic origins began to argue that Luzia's hypothesized African-looking features could just be due to genetic drift, and that she instead shared much of the same Siberian and East Asian genetics of all other Native Americans. Genetic drift is the change in the frequency of genes within a population due to random chance, typically brought about by environmental changes. The phenomenon may cause gene variations to go away completely, which has the effect of reducing genetic variation. Additionally, the effect can also cause genes that were initially unlikely to arise and be visible to become dominant, and in many cases, even become permanent recurring fixtures of a population. However, in November 2018, a DNA sequencing study was released by researchers at the University of São Paulo and Harvard University that concluded that Luzia did not have any connection with peoples from Southeast Asia and the Andaman Islands, and instead had DNA that was entirely related to Siberian and East Asian populations. The researchers examined the DNA from several sets of human remains, found in the caves of Lagoa Cinta, and dated to between 10,000 to 9,000 years ago, and found that they closely matched the same mitochondrial DNA haplogroup D4H3A that is carried by North American Clovis-era remains, such as the Anzac 1 remains from Montana, and the same Y chromosome haplogroup as the Spirit Cave remains from Nevada. Andre Strauss of the Max Planck Institute, who worked on the study, concluded that skull morphology is not an accurate indicator of where a person's ancestors originated. Instead, he emphasized that genetics are far more accurate. However, Neves' idea that the original inhabitants of South America were largely replaced genetically by another subsequent wave of migrants still lingered. The researchers in the 2018 study found that the DNA from the Clovis-era remains quickly disappeared around 9,000 years ago, and were replaced by pre-Clovis-era migrants whose DNA has remained dominant to the present day within modern indigenous groups. Even Neves' highly contested assertion that migrants into America carried substantial DNA traceable to Australian Aboriginals and Melanesians persisted to an extent, as a small percentage of the human remains of the 2018 study analyzed were found to have a small trace of DNA from Australia and Melanesia. The researchers were unable to explain why these genes were only present in a small percentage of the individuals sampled, and much less so why it has been present in Brazil for over 10,000 years, but yet is absent in all other DNA-tested human remains from the Americas that are just as old or older and found further north. For years, Luzia's remains were proudly stored and displayed at the National Museum of Brazil, one of the most important archaeological museums in South America, and home to countless priceless culturally significant treasures. Within the museum, the skull of Luzia was displayed alongside the physical version of the 1998 digital facial reconstruction. Tragically, though, in September 2018, the National Museum of Brazil caught fire, and the Luzia remains were believed to have been destroyed, along with a multitude of irreplaceable artifacts. Years of government corruption had denied basic funding to help keep the building safe. For decades, people had been warning of fire hazards in the building, such as a lack of a sprinkler system. A glimmer of hope came on October 19, 2018, when it was publicly announced that the Luzia skull had been recovered from the wreckage of the museum, albeit in a damaged state. The skull was said to have been stored on the first floor in a closet, inside of a metal box. Purportedly, this all helped the skull survive the fire. Coincidentally, a mere 2 months after the tragic fire in November 2018, the study on the genetic connection between Luzia and the other Native American remains found throughout the Americas was released. A new facial reconstruction of one of the skulls found at Lagoa Cinta was also carried out by Caroline Wilkinson, who is a forensic anthropologist from Liverpool John Moores University. In the minds of Brazilians and the scientific community, this reconstruction effectively replaces the original museum-displayed 1998 facial reconstruction. The museum fire that destroyed the 1998 facial reconstruction marked a dramatic end to Neves' theories that individuals such as Luzia may have had strong Australian Aboriginal and Melanesian DNA markers in them. In its place stands the 2018 facial reconstruction, which is seen by the scientific community as far more accurate, as its features generally align with Siberian and East Asian genetically descended Native Americans. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed my documentary, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/World Chronicles.